Hello to everyone at home and welcome to the next edition of our New South Wales Referees Life Member Series. Today we're joined by a man who's had a very different path in terms of his refereeing career over the years, and we're going to hear a bit about that today. He's a former Executive Officer of the Association and Life Member. It's Cole Turnell. Welcome, Cole.
Thanks, Daniel. Good to be here.
Nice to meet you too. How have you been? Thankfully, we're starting to peel back some of these restrictions and getting back to somewhat normality. How did you keep yourself busy specifically during this time?
Busy. I have a business which I run, but not working too much. So I spend a little bit of time on that. Working around the house, we got a few repair jobs done, got some tradies in to give them some work and fix up some things around the house, and while golf was cut down to playing in pairs, I still got a few games of golf, and yeah, I survived okay, and I'm healthy and well, and we both are. That's great.
It's good to hear. So away from recent events, you mentioned golf. What keeps you busy, and what are some of your pursuits outside footy?
Well, basically a bit of work. I play a fair bit of golf. I'm in a group at Bankstown who do a couple of trips away each year, and it gives me great adult social contact in my semi-retirement, and I really enjoy that. Looking after my wife, travelling, and now I have 3 children. She has a couple. We now have 6 granddaughters, all under the age of 3. So that keeps us busy as well.
Yeah, that would definitely keep you busy, particularly girls too.
Exactly. We've got our fingers crossed for a boy sometime.
Now, I must ask, I've asked everyone else who's mentioned golf, what is your handicap at the moment?
18, and going the wrong way.
Now, you touched on it a little bit, but can you tell us a little bit about working life, what stage you were at, and what roles have you had over your career?
I started work in Sydney with the Department of Lands as a survey draftsman. That's when I came to Sydney from Wagga. I did that for about 20 years, and then decided I'd always liked to do conveyancing, and I met someone and I joined the Property Conveyancers Association in the late 1880s, and have progressed from there to open my own conveyancing business, which has been running for 30 years. And, you know, I took up some roles with that institute, and that kept me busy as well. Daniel, I served as a state and national president and on their council as well. So, yeah, I've always found myself wanting to do those sort of things and keep myself busy and active and healthy as well.
So you mentioned you're starting to peel back. What's that look like for you? Are you in there a couple of days a week or just from arm's length?
I do half a day a week where I go and see the girls, keep them happy. They don't need me there. They're all qualified and very capable. So I look after a bit of bookkeeping and make sure everyone gets paid properly, and do any running around that they want me to do. And that's sufficient, yeah.
Yep. So I might start to talk about your refereeing career. So you're a life member of Canterbury Refs, but this is not where your journey started. Many fine referees over the years have come from the country. Can you tell us a little bit about the story of you taking up the whistle back in Wagga in 1964?
Yes, I can, Daniel. I'd love to, and it's a very interesting story. I started playing junior league in about 1959. There was no junior league in Wagga. My dad and a few other guys got together and formed the league, and we started off. I was playing 4 Stone Sevens and then progressed through the grades until in 1964, I was captain of the Wagga Wanderers 7 Stone 7 team. There was a representative game on at the Wagga Cricket Ground between, I think, Newcastle and Riverina, and we were due to play a curtain raiser against a team from Tumut. Their bus broke down, so they didn't get there. So at the last minute, we decided to play a 7-a-side game, split my team into two, and they said, you can referee it. So I did. And I don't know how I did it, but I did it. And a former grade referee, Jack Jewell, was to referee the rep game. And he came and he watched me and he came and said, Dad, he's got a bit of potential, so let's train him. So I got coached. And then in the August of that year, I came to Sydney and went to Cyril Wiggles' place. Cyril was a rules man and a great coach, and so he put me through there. Then I went to do the exam. Paul Pearce examined me. I didn't make any mistakes and got my schoolboys referee's ticket and went back to Wagga. And the funny part of the story was television in Wagga had only started 2 months earlier, and every Saturday night they would have a 10-minute interview with the rugby league personality of the week. And when I got back to Wagga, I was interviewed on television at 16 as the rugby league personality of the week. So there you go.
That would have been I was going to say, it would have been a bit of a shock for a young boy from the country. I noticed that you mentioned the weight and age competitions. They were heavy back then. They were the way
in the country. Yes, they only played weight divisions. There was no age limit. Yeah.
So was it work or rugby league that brought you to Sydney, or a bit of both?
No, I got a job with the Lands Department in Sydney, and I came to Sydney and lived at Campsie with my grandmother. And I'd been refereeing for a couple of years. This was in 1966. So at the start of 67 season, I rang up the Bulldogs and they said, "Oh, go and see Reg." So I rang Reg and I went up to their meeting, with my schoolboy's ticket at 18 years of age, and they had a long discussion that I decided to change the rules and admit referees who were between 18 and 21. So I became their first junior member or schoolboy member on that night and started refereeing there. Yeah.
So you were graded into the New South Wales ranks in 1973 as member number 642. What were your thoughts at the time, and how did your career progress through the lower grades from here?
Well, ecstatic. It was a goal, firstly, to get there, but I didn't think I was going to get there that quick. I was going all right at Canterbury and had a couple of grand finals in the previous years, but it was a little bit overwhelming. I had been our delegate to the New South Wales referees, so I knew a few of the older guys, and here was a chance to get to know them better and train with them, and and learn my craft a bit better and see how I'd go.
So you were quite young for your time?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely, yes. Yeah, most of the guys in grade were a lot older. A couple of the guys like Jim Mitchell and Robbie McDonald, who were graded at the same time, were, say, around my age. There was starting to be a few, but yeah, I was quite young for that.
Now, you had some success in the lower grades. You've got a bit of a story to tell about the second division grand finals.
Yeah, well, that was interesting. I'd refereed under 23s and done my share of lines in the first couple of years, and then 75 was an interesting year where I sort of progressed up to reserve grade. I also that was the start of the Commonwealth Bank Cup, and I refereed the first game of that. That was played as a curtain raiser to the Anchor Cup. And then at the end of the year, I was sort of pretty established in reserve grade, and got appointed to the semi-finals, finals, and grand finals in second division, which was a great thrill. Yeah.
So what would
Can't
you
remember much of the game, but Yeah.
What would you draw the parallel to now? Second division, is that, say, Metropolitan Cup, or is that the New
Yeah,
South
like
Wales
Metropolitan.
Cup con?
Yeah, it's sort of a cross between both of those, yes. You know, there was some good younger players in it, but there was predominantly a lot of older players who'd come back from grade who still wanted to play, and that made it, you know, a really good grounding for the younger players and for the younger referees. We had when we get together and talk about our old times at our life members lunch, there's plenty of stories about what happened at in second division. They're actually they're the more funny ones, actually.
So they would have been teams like Ryde Eastwood, Sydney Uni, Wentworthville.
Yeah, Blacktown, Liverpool, yeah, St Mary's.
That would have been
Terrific.
quite a tough standard of footy to referee.
Well, it was, and it was a good grounding for you that you know, you had to be on your guard all the time and know what you're doing, and it taught you how to deal with, you know, especially me as a younger guy,
Yeah.
to deal with older players and how to speak to them and that sort of thing. Whether I learned that well is another thing, but yeah, it was a very good grounding. Yeah.
Now, your fully fledged first grade career, or first grade debut, sorry, comes in 1976, which we'll talk about in a moment. But you had a bit of a taste in 1975 in a match between Eastern Suburbs and Penrith at the sports ground. You refereed 3/4 of that match. Keith Page came off injured. How did you find that experience, being thrust in as a young man, having already refereed the reserve grade game beforehand?
Yeah, yeah. I was prepared by the fact that Keith was trialling to do a World Cup game the next week, and he had a crook hamstring anyway. So I knew there was a chance I'd get a run. So I was there, you know, dressed and ready. And then after 20 minutes, when it happened, I just went on and, you know, did my thing as a referee, and it was terrific to get on and see how fast the game was compared to reserve grade, and, you know, and to be part of a game that included, you know, really good players, and watch their skill and see what I could do. An interesting, I think Penrith played East, and the Penrith centre broke away from his own 20-metre line and just flew down the field. And at that stage, I was really fast. I was up with him, and this big flash came across in front of me and just knocked him over, you know, super tackle, let it around the legs. And I've gone, good tackle number 13. And Ron Coote stood up, you know, and I went, geez, what's all this about, you know? How good's this? And so, yeah, I finished the game, went and got changed. Jack Harris was on the board. He came over and he said, you refereed better in first grade than you did in second grade. So take that as a compliment, or I went really bad in reserve grade.
Was certainly a man that was always to the point, Jack Harris. Yep, that would have been quite interesting. I suppose you're a bit starstruck, for the lack of a better word, coming on, but you didn't have the time to dwell on it either. You would sort of just...
No, that's right. Well, you throw it in, and it's like most games that you're trained and skilled at, that you know, you have your nerves before, and once the whistle blows, you're into your pattern, and you do what you're trained to do, and that's what we all do, and that's why we perform so well. And yeah.
So early in 1976, you refereed what ended up being a significant game in the history of rugby league. The AMCO Cup match between Norths and Newtown spilled over into an all-in brawl with multiple players sent off. It was the first time in history that they actually used video evidence to cite players and suspend players. What were your memories of the brawl and the events around the time?
Well, I do have memories of it. It was a terrible night. It poured rain. I think there was, you know, mainly for television, the AMCO Cup. I think there was about 150 people in the ground, and it was ordinary. This brawl broke out when one player ran in to another player, and I think kneed him while he was on the ground. and I know you're showing this footage now, it's interesting. So the two touch judges and I, we tried to control it. It got out of hand, and there was just almost every player on the field got into it. I can vividly remember looking at the clock on the ground, and I thought, oh, there's 7 minutes to go. They've got to stop when the bell goes, And anyway, it went for 45 seconds. So between us, we got 3 guys. So we sent 3 players off, and from that, and from the video, the league cited 3 other players, and it was interesting at the judiciary when we walked in. They got the 3 of us and the 3 players, and they walked them in, and the chairman, Dick Dunn, said to the players, "Come in here and look what you did to rugby league last night." And so they'd had a good look at it, and I think they knew what they were going to do. So anyhow, it was a significant game, and some of my history, and that's it.
So you actually still had to go to judiciary despite the fact that they had the video?
Oh, yeah, they wanted our evidence as well, yes.
Yeah. And I suppose were they surprised, the players, as you mentioned, to see the footage?
I think they were all stunned. I don't think they were going to say a word because they were going to incriminate themselves, just from my memory. But the guys on the judiciary did all the talking and then made their decision, and we all went home. That was it. Yeah.
So, as mentioned earlier, your full debut as a referee came in round 3 of 1976, with Newtown playing Easts at Henson Park. Your touch judges were the very experienced Brian Barry and Max Thompson. Do you have any recollections of this match or the lead up to it?
Just that I got a lot of phone calls and a few telegrams, and from friends and from the Bulldogs club, congratulating me on the game. And anyway, I got the game. Yeah, I was fine. I just I didn't have any preconceived ideas. I just knew I could referee, and I just went out and refereed. And again, it was just another experience with a better class of players. And I've got no special recollections of that match, just that it was a start.
Yeah. As referees, we don't have bias or don't have major affiliations, but it must have been nice to get that recognition from the district that you'd gone through, that I suppose helped you get there in a way.
Well, yes, it was. It was from Peter Moore, and he was always, 99% of the time friendly to referees. He'd come and have a chat and have a talk, and off we'd go. And it was good. The one small story from that game. Now I see the program. We were packing down a scrum, and someone from East said to me, "Oh, you're only a young bloke, you're new, aren't you? What are you doing here?" Something like that. And Beeston said, "Shut up, mate." He said, "He refereed us last week and he was all right." And I refereed Beeston in reserve grade the week before. So just little things like that you recall, not the overall game. Yeah.
It's funny how players pick up on those kind of things.
Yeah, and he was protecting himself and protecting his team, and they always try and get on the good side of you anyway, so why not?
Looking at the program, lots of big names too: Fairfax, John Brass, Mark Harris, Ron Coote, Beetson.
Yeah, look at him. Yeah.
So you had, I suppose, a modest start to your refereeing career. Who were some of the people that helped you through? Who were some of the mentors or influential figures coming through? Well,
interestingly, when I got to grade, I'd already been good friends with Don McDonald, who was a good first grade referee at the time, and I got to know Keith Page, and I got to know Laurie Breers, and they would talk to me, but generally most of the the referees would be helpful in, talking to you and giving you advice. Although we were all competitors, we still were in this little band of people who were all together and doing the same job and all trying to be better at that job for the good of themselves and for the good of the game. And, I got a lot of help off lots of people, and it was great.
I think it's hard for people outside of our refereeing bubble to understand, but we are another team together.
Exactly.
We share resources, share information, although, as you said, competing against each other, but definitely wanting to raise our standards as a group.
Definitely right, Daniel. And I'm sure you're right that the majority of people don't realise that or understand that. But we do, and we get on with our job.
So you refereed a few first grade games that season, and then went back to reserve grade. A tough time in your career. What lessons did you learn from that first period?
I don't know that I learned a lot. I just tried. I learned that it probably wasn't a good idea for me to go up the grade ladder quickly and get to that first grade level in 3 years. I've seen from other examples like Graham Annesley, who spent a lot longer time going up the grades to establish himself. And I think with hindsight, I would have been better had that happened to me. But I would have been able to establish myself a bit better. But it is what it is. I loved every minute of it. I had great times, and we had a great social time then. We'd get together after games and have a few beers and have a talk, and we do the same at training. And we could have a laugh and and not be quite so serious about it, but still maintain some professionalism on the field and with what we were doing and how we carried ourselves.
So following 4 first grade games as a touch judge in 1979, you decided to hang up the boots. With hindsight, we know that this is not the end of your story. How did this play out at the time?
Well, the decision to retire was earlier in that year. I did 3 under 23 games, and I just lost my confidence, and it was going downhill. I just got married. We were planning on having children, so I decided I'd give that part away and just look for another sport, do some other things, play a bit more golf maybe, and then look after the family, which is primarily what I did. Even though I stayed a member of the New South Wales referees, I was a social secretary at the time. I did another 4 years of that, then assistant secretary, and then secretary. So I was involved, and I really loved that. so I kept myself busy with that as well.
So as you said, to your immense credit, you continued to regularly attend association meetings, contribute as social secretary, and then most notably the 2 years as executive officer or association secretary at the time.
Yes.
Despite that busy workload and schedule away from football, what made you do this? What made you maintain this connection to the association at that time?
Just a desire to see things work properly for the Referees Association. I just wanted to be involved and contribute, to the running of the association. I'd had my time as a referee, and I was quite happy with that. And it was interesting. Don McDonald and Ian McCall were the 2 presidents for the 2 years I served as secretary, and my best mate Peter Longhurst was the treasurer at the time. And we had some great meetings with John Quayle, discussing fees and discussing referees' problems and sponsorship and anything else John Quayle wanted to talk about. And yeah, that was very interesting, you know. And I'd come from a public service sort of background, and I wasn't used to those sort of meetings, but Peter was, and Ian and Don were, so they sort of carried me through that, and it was another learning curve, so it was good.
So evidently, these contributions would have led to you being awarded life membership of the association in 1984. What did this recognition mean to you?
Well, it was sort of the ultimate recognition from the association. No one strives to get that, but the work you do and the contributions you make are rewarded with that over time. And yeah, I was extremely happy and you know, proud of what I'd done, and proud of what every other life member had done, you know, to ensure the longevity of the association and its health, and you know, through the years.
So not only are you a life member of New South Wales Referees, but you're also a life member of Canterbury Bankstown Referees. You initially received this recognition in 1979 and then have since been represented with your blazer. Can you fill us in a little bit about some of the roles you did in your local district?
Well, in the local district, you know, I was the young up-and-coming referee. I served time, you know, on the social committee, social secretary, some time while I was in grade on the watching younger referees and trying to help them. But basically just joining into everything. I was single at the time. I was pretty sociable. You know, I enjoy going out with them and having a good time.
Yep.
Like your photos, mate. They're good.
Now, your ongoing contributions have been acknowledged with Canterbury Referees with the awarding of the Leo Randall Award in 2013. This is probably the most prestigious award in the Canterbury district. Many great names and even some life members of our association have won it. Can you fill us in a little bit about, for those that don't know, a little bit about Leo Randall and the legacy he had at Canterbury, and then what that recognition meant to you?
Yes, I shall. Leo was joined in 1948. He served as a president through about 5 years in the 1950s. He was a graded referee and just a real stalwart of the association. He would always come to meetings, always go to functions, and he always drank Reshers. So whenever Leo was around, we'd always have a Reshers, and we still have one in his honour at the every time we get together. The association decided to start this award before Leo died, so it's not a memorial thing. And I think for about the first 5 or 6 years, Leo presented the award, and you know, he was just a great guy and like a founding father of the modern era of Canterbury referees, and he's really held in high esteem, and it's great.
So correct me if I'm wrong. Is it for 25 years service following life membership? That's quite significant.
25 years. Yes.
So it's a significant contribution.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and there's some famous names on the trophy, and I'm happy that I'm there with them. Yeah.
So now a book could be written on the trial and tribulations of the Super League. It was a very indifferent time for refereeing. However, it provided numerous opportunities across the board in various forms. This was the avenue for you to return to first grade some 18 years after retiring. How did this come about?
Seems a long time, 18 years, doesn't it? But it came about, you know, I was really interested, and I listened to all the John Rebo interviews and all the talk about Super League on the radio, and I didn't think too much about it. And then Graham Annesley rang me and he said, "You retired too early, and we need you. We'd like you to make a comeback and do some touch judging in Super League. And I went, yeah, I'll do that for a couple of reasons. It gave me an opportunity to link up again with some of the guys, the younger guys like Bill Harrigan and Graham Annesley, who were refereeing when I was secretary of the association. They were just starting out. And also meet some new guys, like Tim Mander and Steve Chitty and Steve Carroll and the guys from New Zealand. And, it gave me an opportunity to go and train again, to keep fit. And at the time I retired previously, my kids had never seen me on a football field, so they didn't really know. So it gave me an opportunity to take them to the football and see what I did. And it was a great opportunity to do a lot of things. And I think it helped me a lot generally, in my overall life and confidence in what I do. It was terrific.
So after 18 years, I suppose until Super League actually hit, that couldn't have been on your radar. It couldn't have been
no way
in your train of thought.
No, nowhere near it. No.
Yeah. So and then from there, you end up doing 2 more seasons, which we'll touch on in a moment. So it really did reinvigorate, restart your career.
Oh yes, it did. Yeah, it was a second chance to do something that I really loved, and at a more mature age, probably better able to handle it. We had a good time with that, and it was a great 3 years of my life.
And I suppose one aspect, thinking about it now, was that you wouldn't have really experienced much in your first coming was the travel aspect of it with Super League.
No, there was a lot of travel. Yeah. Well, I didn't referee outside New South Wales in the first time, but as it is with Super League, I've refereed in every state and territory in Australia, other than Tasmania. So, we got to travel, we got to see different things. You get to know the guys a bit better, when you're travelling with them, and it was terrific.
Yep. Now, someone who followed a very similar career path to you was the late Steve Nash. He too had a long time out of the game and used Super League to kickstart his career, going on to achieve many great things at the top level. You had a close affiliation with him?
Yeah, we came from the same sort of background, actually, as you mentioned, and Steve didn't live too far from me, and neither did John Coleman, one of the referees' trainers. So when we started, we'd get together once a week at Oakley Park and do an hour's training session with John, Steve and I, and we became pretty close, and we travelled a lot. We did games together, and it was terrific. Someone with that experience, and with a lot of others who'd come in, and a lot of the others who were recruited to be touch judges in Super League hadn't been around for that long, but had experience, and it was good to get together with all of them. And Steve was a vital part of the Super League referees.
We'll touch on it later, but you also got to share the State of Origin experience with him, which I'm sure would have been special. Super League changed many things in the game and refereeing. One in particular was the utilisation of technology, namely the video referee and the referee microphones. For someone, when they were last in first grade, had merely hand signals and your voice as communication tools. What was this like?
Well, I thought, this is not going to be any good, that was my initial thought when I heard, the talks about it. But Steve and Graham and I went to Newcastle and refereed a trial match, and we took the communications gear to give it a trial, and it worked really well, provided the touch judges didn't try and referee the game for the referee. you were there to be an assistant, not a commentator on the whole of the game, and tell him how to make decisions. And once you got that down pat, it was great. And I think it worked well initially. There's probably still a bit of debate about how far you should take the video technology in refereeing decisions, and that's not going to change. There'll always be talk and discussion about that.
So there were some absolute blowouts during the World Club Challenge, which was a new initiative during the Super League time when teams would travel from England. You actually did the semi-final, Hunter versus Cronulla. How were these experiences for you as a touch judge with the England sides coming over?
Yeah, it was interesting. They played different sort of football. They weren't quite as up there as our guys with sort of fitness or ability. So that's what happened with the blowouts. The one good thing about being a touch judge in Super League in that year was that they changed the rule that after a goal you didn't have the team that scored the try kicked off. So you only had to run back to the 20-metre line, not the other end of the field. Like we'd have been worn out if we'd had to do that.
Yep.
But there was a whole heap of interesting things that happened around that time. It was it was a great insight for me.
Yep. So you had a successful season in the Super League, and you ended up being appointed to the touchline for the reserve grade grand final between Canterbury and the Warriors at the old ANZ Stadium in Brisbane. It was highly likely that this was probably one of the bigger crowds that you'd officiated in terms of your career up until that point.
It was a big crowd, and I was happy to have my wife and kids at the game, so we travelled up there together to watch that, and it was really, really good. I enjoyed it. I can't remember too much about the game, but it was terrific. But the one thing I can remember after the game is that obviously in the first grade, Brisbane beat the Sharks. Immediately following the game, Wayne Bennett came down to the referee's room and got all our children, and before anybody else got into the Brisbane change rooms, he took all the kids in there to meet the players and say hello. And that was really wonderful. The kids were, my kids were, early teenagers, and they just thought it was fantastic, and so did everybody. And that was a nice touch.
No, I'm sure it would have been. Bit of a dusty night the night before.
Oh, it was a long day that day. We had a Canterbury Life Members reunion night the night before. So I was at the club at home, and, we had a 6 o'clock flight to Brisbane. I was tired and had a headache, and I had a sleep in the afternoon and recovered enough to get through the game. It was nice. Yeah. Good
so when the two competitions came back together, you officiated for a further 2 seasons, as we said, touch judging a further 48 first grade games. How did you find that first year when the NRL came together, the ARL and the Super League, the two competitions came back together, and the game was heading in one direction? Yeah,
it was interesting. It was like a little bit of a clash between the two old enemies in some ways with the footballers. And also there was a bit of a challenge between the referees to see who could perform the best, who could train the hardest. And, there was some interesting challenges when we did our first training camp together. And but we all settled down, put our egos in our back pockets, and got on to do the job that we were supposed to do, and that was officiating the games to the best of our ability. And we had a good time. It was good.
Yeah. So what was training like for a touch judge back in those days? How many nights a week at the NRL level?
Primarily that I would train with that, firstly, that 1 day a week when we did with Steve Nash and them. I'd do another night's training, basically running, exercises, strengthening stuff. But generally, I've been a good trainer all my life and tried to keep myself fit all the time. So, I didn't have any trouble doing it. I like doing it. So, yeah.
Yep. Is that something? It's always been a passion of yours, keeping fit. I think you mentioned to me you're a runner away from the footy field.
Yeah, in the time off I had between the two refereeing stints, I took up fun running and training. And in that time, I did a lot of fun runs, and I ended up doing a marathon in Melbourne, which was the only one. So that's something to tick off. And I also took up orienteering, running through the bush with one of my other referee mates, Terry Murphy. And we did okay at that. We had a good time. We took the families away and camped in the bush and ran through the bush in the early morning looking at kangaroos and trying to find the control points we were supposed to find, and got lost. And but it was another physical activity that helped keep me fit, and yeah, it was good.
So potentially the career highlight for you, I might ask that in a minute, if it was your highlight. In 1999, when you touch judged the third State of Origin game between New South Wales and Queensland at Suncorp Stadium on a wet and soggy night. Now, this was famous because it was the first draw in Origin history, and then we had the tied series. Do you remember the feelings of being informed of that appointment and the experience in itself?
Yes, I do, Daniel. It was very, very exciting, and for my family and for me, and lots of congratulations, telephone calls, and it was terrific. And then going up there, it was good. It was just a shame that it was a really wet night. I don't have exceptional memories of the game. My communications gear broke down as we went onto the field, and I had no communication with anybody for the first half of the game, which made it difficult because you couldn't sort of get into the game and contribute where you were supposed to. Like, you couldn't do your job properly. And then made a mistake that I shouldn't have made, which didn't help just before half time. But yeah, it was memorable getting the appointment. It was memorable doing the game, and it was a bit of an anticlimax at the end of the game with the 10-all draw, and everyone just stood around looking at each other. No one knew who'd won the series. No one knew if they were going to play an extra 10 minutes or whatever, and it took them about half an hour to work out who'd won the series. By that time, everyone was changed, and it was sort of quite funny, actually.
You touched on the comms gear. I know personally running, it is a frustrating experience, but how did you manage to get your mind on the job?
Oh, well, you just had to go back and do what you did. You had to just watch the play and keep your eye on the ball and keep your eye on the players, and just knowing that if you needed to say something to Steve in the middle, you couldn't do it. But well, everybody has hurdles, mate. You just keep going.
Yep. And how did you find the Lang Park, the Suncorp experience, the atmosphere?
Oh, it was terrific. Like the amount of people and the noise and everything's just it's totally different to television. Yeah.
Did you get to share the experience with your family? Did anyone get to fly up with you?
Yeah, my wife came up to that game, yes.
So you retired at the end of the 1999 season.
Yes.
This time it was for good. Do you look back with fond memories of your second coming in as a first grade match official?
I certainly do, and and I maintain the friendships that I made, and with those guys, and I still catch up with them every now and then. I was in Brisbane last November and had dinner and with Tim Mander and his wife, and I had a great time. And I'll be back there this year to have a game of golf with him. And it's terrific. And I was in Auckland a year ago and caught up with Alan Caddy. We ran lines together in Super League, and it was fantastic. So, you can always sit down and talk about old refereeing stories. There's plenty of them.
There's always a story. So I'm sure we've touched on part of it, and you've probably touched on part of it there in that response. But sitting back at the end of it all, what are some of the biggest things that you take away from refereeing? You've contributed a lot to the game, and as I say to most people, what we contribute is just a drop in the ocean to what we get out of the game. What are some of the biggest things that Cole's gotten out?
You're exactly right about that, Daniel. The things that I'll take away from it are the friendships I've made. My two best mates at Canterbury, Cliff Haynes and Peter Longhurst, who I met 50 years ago, are still extremely close friends and golf partners, and we get on terrifically. There's other guys, like I mentioned, Terry Murphy and Bob Garwood and Paul Archer, who I've known for almost 50 years, and that friendship will last forever, and that's just fantastic. The other thing that I can take out of refereeing is the confidence that it gives you, and the ability to communicate with people, and how to talk to people, and how to listen to them, and how to respond to them. That gives you a great confidence to approach life and life situations, and that's been the real bonus for me, and the friendship and contacts I've made with other people.
So you think those kind of characteristics and those traits that you've got from refereeing definitely helped in, I suppose, your working life in particular?
Oh, they most certainly did. My wife doesn't believe it at the moment that I used to be a shy kid from the bush, but I was, and I'm not now.
All right, we're going to jump into our fast five to finish off this morning. Barbecue or tomato sauce?
Tomato sauce, please.
Good man. Ford or Holden?
Holden.
Good man. Did you own a Holden at any stage?
Yes, yeah, I did. Yeah, with the family kids, the old station wagon, mate.
Okay. Now, you've participated in both of these. State of Origin or Grand Final?
The Grand Final's my favourite.
As in terms of the build-up of a whole year, the effort?
Yeah, basically that. And I think it's the combination of everything. In some ways, State of Origin's a one-off, but, you know, for club football, I think that's important. Yeah.
Beach or snow?
Beach, definitely.
And last one, a doozy to finish, money or free time?
Free time. Yeah. I have a very good friend who always says to me, I'd rather run out of money than time. And he's quite right.
I think that's a good take-home message. So thank you, Cole, for your time this morning. It's a fascinating story. It's quite different to many others that we've spoken to. We're very thankful for you giving of your time and sharing it with us. Make sure you look after your wife and the rest of the family, and stay safe.
I will. And thank you very much, Daniel, for the opportunity, and congratulations to you on your initiative. It's fantastic.
No worries.
The history will be great.
I really appreciate that. I think we've got so many stories. Everyone's got a different story to tell. And like you said, it really helps with preserving the history of this great association, which has given us a lot and will continue to do to people.
It certainly will, yes. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Cole. Have a good one. I'll be in touch.